Welcome everyone to this lecture on the select statement. Select is the most common statement used in SQL, and it fundamentally allows us to retrieve information from a table that exists within a database. Later on, we're going to be learning about how to combine the select statement with other statements to perform more complex queries. So what's the actual example syntax for a select statement? Well, after opening up the query editor, what we're going to write for our most basic select statement is select column name from table name. And you'll notice that in general, we capitalize the SQL keywords. This actually isn't 100% necessary. SQL will still run even if you don't capitalize these, but it makes it much easier to read what are the fundamental SQL syntax statements versus what are the column names or table names that you're yourself editing, depending on what you actually want. So the most basic syntax here is we choose a column name from a table. So let's see how this actually works within PostgreSQL. So we already know that we have a database, and then we right-click on that database and we open up that query editor. In our case, it will be the example DVD rental database. And so the way PostgreSQL operates is inside of this database, you're going to have some number of tables. Here we have an example of 3 tables. And recall then each of these tables is essentially like a spreadsheet. We have columns and then rows of data. And here I've just made up some data. So each of these tables has columns 1, 2, and 3, so C1, C2, C3, and then rows with made up information. When we actually say select column name from table name, PostgreSQL essentially reads this a little bit backwards. It first has to decide what table you're referencing. It already knows what database you're referencing because that's how you open the query editor on that database. So it takes a look at what table name you're looking at, and then it's going to take a look at the corresponding column name. So, for example, we could say select C1 from table 1, and it would look something like this. It's actually grabbing column 1, and it will return back that entire column, and X, Y, and Z. If we want to select multiple columns from a table, we can say column 1, comma, column 2, etc. You just separate out the column names by a comma. And keep in mind, these don't need to be in order. So if you only wanted column 1 and column 3, you would just say select the names of your columns separated by commas and then from the table you want them in. If you actually want all the columns from a table, you can use an asterisk symbol in order to request all the columns from a table, essentially just asking for the entire table back. So you'll say select an asterisk and then from table. In general, it's not good practice to use an asterisk unless you actually want every single thing in that table. And what's going to happen here is if you use that asterisk in the select statement, it's going to automatically query everything, which increases traffic between the database server and the application, which can slow down the retrieval of results. So you should really only be using that syntax if you actually want the entire table back with all the columns in it. If you only need certain columns, do your best to only query for those columns. Let's go ahead and walk through some examples in our DVD rental database to get some practice with these basic select statements. I'm going to open up pgadmin. Alright, so I've opened up pgadmin. I'm going to click down on servers. Note that I have different versions of PostgreSQL installed on this computer. Go ahead and choose the one that you installed for your computer. I'll go ahead and choose PostgreSQL 12 since that's what we restored DVD rental on. I've now connected to that server under PostgreSQL 12, and now I want to query the particular database inside that server. So that's going to be DVD rental. I right click, and then I'm going to open up the query tool. I take a look at the query tool and I have the query editor as well as the data output. So let's practice our very first query to this database. So if you're ever curious of what tables are actually available to you in your database, what you can do is underneath DVD rental, you can open up schemas. You'll see there's a public schema, keep going down, and you'll see there's tables here, and you can expand on tables, and it'll show you the various tables available to you inside of this database. And you can check out the resources for this lecture or the previous lectures. We actually have a mapping of those tables and the relationships between them. We'll talk a lot more about joining tables together and also programmatically asking a database what tables are within it. But right now, we'll just do this through the pgadmin graphical interface. So I can see there's 15 tables here. And if we click on one of these tables, we can later on see what columns are available, etc. So let's go ahead and start by asking for an entire table back, or all the columns in a table. I say select and then I type in an asterisk there, from, and then we'll say actor, semicolon. And then I'll go ahead and run this. And if you're on Windows, you can choose F5 to quickly run that. And you'll notice that it has the data output. I'm going to kind of move this over so we can see this. And we can see here it has the actor ID, the first name, the last name, and then the last update. And we can scroll down here and see the various results. So again, this returns back all the columns. If I only want a single column, let's say I only wanted the first name, then I just look at the column name, which is first underscore name, say first underscore name, and then I'll go ahead and run that. And now I only get back the first name. If I want the first and last name, I would take a look at those column names, which I can always refer to over here on the side. Last name's available there, and then run that. Okay, so I can see first name and last name, and keep in mind they actually don't need to be in any sort of order. If I wanted the last name to show up first, I could say last name, comma, first name, run that, and it would show me in the order I requested. The last name column showing up first, and then the first name. Everything's linked here by what row. So we can see Penelope Guinness, Nick Wahlberg, etc. Now a few more points I want to show you is that you notice that I capitalized the SQL syntax keywords, but even if these were all lowercase, select, and then I put from in all lowercase, and I run this, it will actually still work. It's the same thing. However, it's much easier to read, and it's just standardized notation if we just do this in all caps, and then I can quickly realize if I'm coming back to this that select and from are the keywords. And notice pgadmin also highlights them for us. You'll also notice that I have a semicolon here. The semicolon is to denote the end of a query, but if you delete that semicolon and still run this, you'll notice it works just fine. So things like capitalizing those SQL keywords, as well as adding in that semicolon, really helps as far as readability is concerned, especially if you're going to be sharing these SQL queries with someone else. It can read very clearly where this actual query is meant to end, as well as what commands you're actually using. You can use the scratchpad here if you want to kind of play around with things later on as our SQL queries get more complex. You may want to work a little bit on this scratchpad. And I'm going to zoom out just so we can see this clearly. There is a query history that you can click here, and you can see the various query histories. And then you can always copy them, or you can copy them directly to the query editor. So for example, if we come back here, maybe to select first name from actor, I can say copy to query editor, and it jumps back to the query editor, and I can see select first name from actor is already there for me. All right. And then if I wanted to, I could run this and edit it in any way I want. So I can just double click here and start editing for another table. Maybe I want all the columns from another table. Let's say select everything from city, semicolon, hit F5, which is essentially a refresh or running this. And we can see here city ID, city, country ID, last update. Okay, so those are the very basics of the select statement. Coming up next, we're going to have just a few challenges to make sure you understood all this.